If you believe that your child has been sexually abused, you must report it to law enforcement. Minors are not expected to make the decision to report. This is the adult's responsibility. If your 12-year-old is begging you not to report, you will need to tell them that you have no option. In certain organizations, colleges, or religious groups, they will tell you that they want to deal with the issue of abuse internally. This is never appropriate, and there must be a report made to law enforcement. Reports to law enforcement must be made in at least the first 8 hours of you becoming aware of the situation. The longer you wait, the more questions law enforcement will have for you about why you did not report this information right away. If you wait any length of time, you must have a solid reason. Reasons such as needing to inform the other parent are acceptable in most cases. However, expect pushback from law enforcement on any reasons keeping you from immediately reporting. Sometimes parents want to question the offender themselves. This is especially true in cases where the offender knows the child or the child's family on a personal level. This is not advisable for many reasons. The most important reason being it could put your child in danger. The second being it may take the element of surprise away from law enforcement. Law enforcement will want to question the offender before anyone tips them off so that they can get a true response from that offender. Remember, your role as a parent is not to investigate. Once you hear enough information to suspect that abuse has occurred, it is time to call law enforcement. For example, if your child tells you that they were touched in the genital area by an adult, you have no reason to ask any further questions. Oftentimes, when we make children retell stories over and over again, they feel as if they've done something wrong. Or sometimes we find small flaws in the story and accuse the child of lying. Both of these can be detrimental to the child's psychological well-being as well as to the case. Most times, if it is a child who has experienced sexual abuse, law enforcement will have the child be interviewed by a child forensic investigator who has specific training in talking to children. If your child is a little older, likely around 12 to 14, depending on the age requirements of your state, the officer may take the initial report from your child. However, they may still require them to talk to a forensic investigator at a later time. You as a parent have the right to ask for an advocate to be present with your child during the report to law enforcement. Sometimes the advocate is not allowed to attend the forensic interview, but other times they are. It depends on the situation and the working relationship between the advocate and law enforcement. Having an advocate when possible is always advisable. Their sole focus is your child and making sure that your child has what they need. What is said to the advocate is confidential and cannot normally be shared with parents. Remember that just because something is required to be reported does not mean that it is prosecutable. There are many factors that play into this that are out of the hands of the officers that are investigating your case. Many times, officers are just as frustrated as the parents are because a case is not going to be able to be upheld in court. However, just because someone is not charged with a crime at this moment does not mean that your efforts are futile or that it should not be reported. In fact, oftentimes, one report will lead to finding out that there is much more going on than what anyone knew. The officer's job is to uphold the law and investigate any criminal activity. This process does not happen quickly. They want to make sure that they are accusing the correct person and gaining the amount of evidence necessary. What this means practically is that this is a long process and that you will often feel like you have no idea what's going on. It is imperative during this process to remember that the officer's job is not to coddle or care for the emotional well-being of the family. This is why it's important for every family to request an advocate to walk alongside them and walk out this process with them. An advocate can provide emotional support as well as help you know how to practically walk out the situation. There's a lot of misinformation out there about law enforcement in regards to reporting crimes of sexual abuse, exploitation, and trafficking. Each state is going to be different in how they handle these situations based on their level of education and experience. Furthermore, every police officer is going to respond differently to these situations based on their personality, education, personal experience, and job requirements. Remember, a police officer whose main job is traffic stops has a different focus than an investigator. As you walk these situations out with your children, remember to ask questions and give the benefit of the doubt when possible. As a whole, law enforcement is turning the corner and doing a much better job than ever before at taking reports and being victim-focused. Working with an advocate will help you navigate working alongside law enforcement in the most effective way.